Hi, I wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about the importance of feedback. I don't have a college degree. I got married and had Ashton at 21. So all my career I owe to working hard, experiences, and tough feedback from people who cared enough about me to give tough feedback. I mentioned on the video I just did that was more vloggy that I just don't like formal videos. I don't watch them anymore. Very produced, very staged kind of videos. And that's really not me at all. I'm relaxed and casual and kind of goofy. So even though this is a formal topic to help your career, I still want it to be very relaxed so it can create a conversation that we have amongst one another. But most importantly, we've all been discussing lately the impact that it's going to have on younger millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, with Gen X being out of the workplace as much as they are lately, especially with companies not hiring older workers. The feedback that we can provide you, millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, can be invaluable to you. It can be something that you haven't heard before. And that's something I'm just really passionate about, is passing on knowledge to others so they can have just as much success as we've had as Gen X in our lives, in our careers, and our work experiences. The first one that I have seen not just help me, but I've seen it help a lot of others. Don't overshare. Don't overshare about your life, your finances, your marital problems, your children's problems, your health, your family drama. Any little thought that you have, it doesn't need to come out and to the world at work. It's not healthy because somebody knows a lot about you, so they have all the leverage in the world on you. B, they develop their own perceptions, and it could be anything. If it's like, say you're talking about financial problems all the time, maybe they're not going to trust you around money or monetary transactions or anything like that. If it's a lot of drama, people get sick of hearing drama. And if you have drama over and over and over again, they lose respect because they want to know why you can't control the drama in your life. You have control over your life, so get a hold of it. Why you don't. Health issues, if you're always talking about health issues, that might make somebody start to think, can they even do this job? Is this stressing them out? Did I hire the right person? Can they handle this? It doesn't mean that you can't ever say to your boss, hey, I need to go home. My child had an issue at school. It's not that. You don't tell them every little single thing that your child did at school and get into all of the details. I worked with several people who every single day they had something going on. And it ties into a couple of these other topics of feedback as well, but it's not all about you. And when you're constantly talking about yourself and bringing all of that drama into the workplace, it can make your coworkers feel uncomfortable. They don't have time to listen to your drama. And I just didn't respect a lot of people who constantly had drama or couldn't leave it at home. Now, I had to learn this. I had to get feedback. When you're in your 20s and go into your 30s, you're learning what you want to talk, what you should talk about and what you should not talk about at the office. You're also learning how to manage drama and deal with drama. You're learning that it's not all about you and that it's not high school where you're constantly talking about stuff. People, like I said, they don't want to hear your drama, but they also look at you and think they're a hot mess. How are they doing their job? And if you're a manager and you're talking about that down to your employees or the people that report up to you, they wonder how you're productive and successful and efficient and all of the things that you need to be as their manager. It makes them lose trust in you. I had a lot of things happen to me in my 20s. I got a divorce. I learned how to share custody of my child. That was very emotional. You always have financial problems in your 20s. You make bad decisions. And I brought it to work, and I had to hear from somebody the same thing that I'm telling you, is that it just makes you look like you don't have it all together. When I was working at a healthcare call center for a very long time, the wonderful place, on the day that a class started, we would go in and introduce ourselves, talk about what's going to happen in orientation in the day, and just make people feel welcome. Sometimes we had breakfast, but it was usually a bunch of managers and the recruiters and me, because I would stay and do orientation. And then they would introduce themselves. And I would always say, this person's not going to make it through the 5 weeks of training. And one person, our recruiter, you just used to say, how do you know that? And it's because they stood up and they overshared. If you're standing up and you're oversharing in your introduction on your very first day of work in front of managers, directors, VPs, HR, then you don't know how to judge situations and you don't know how to manage your filter, and it's going to impact your success everywhere. And it was always, always, always right. That person didn't make it, and there's some sort of a tie there to the responsibility, the maturity, the ability to be successful and to manage your own behavior. There's just something there. So oversharing, I think, is one of the worst things you can do for your career. The next one, especially if you're outgoing, is a boss told me he didn't want me to sit there and not speak, because that doesn't do me any justice either. But he always said, you need to think about, before you open your mouth, why are you talking? Why you're talking. And there's a diagram I have that I will put up here on the screen that kind of is a flow chart of knowing how and when to know if you have something valuable to talk about. And have you ever been in the meetings with people who just start talking to hear themselves talking, and you don't even know if it's really applicable to the problem you're discussing or a solution or anything like that? They're just talking to hear themselves talk. That is a competency that's lacking there. The understanding how to read the room, what's going on, and when and how to speak. If you are opening your mouth and you don't have anything to say that contributes to the discussion in a positive way, a solution in a positive way, information that impacts the discussion, whether, it was information that the parties around the table didn't know that could impact their decision, anything that's applicable, that's great. But to talk about stories that don't really seem to tie back, or to ramble about things that aren't relevant, all of those things put you in the limelight, but not in a healthy way. People are watching you thinking, what are they even talking about? And do they even know what they sound like? And they're just all about them. It impacts your personal brand and what people think of you as far as your contributions to the problem, the challenge, the strategy, the workplace, whatever it is you're working on. Your impact and the belonging that you have in the project, in your role, could be questioned. So look at this chart and think about it every time you want to open your mouth. If you are somebody who relies on humor a lot to either feel more comfortable, or to downplay a situation, or to make the tense environment in the room a little bit better, that is also something to think about. Humor has its own place, and this is big feedback for me. I'm very outgoing. I love jokes. Not jokes, but I just love laughing and having fun in situations, but there's a time for that. And there is a time for professionalism and seriousness. And you need to think through that and start to understand what's what. Ask for feedback. If you're outgoing, or if you're new to a certain committee or board or meeting, ask for feedback. when you leave the meetings after you've spoken for the first time or starting to get more comfortable, and see what your manager or peer that you trust might think of your contributions. But you always want your contributions to be smart, applicable to the situation, relatable, and solution oriented, and not negative, where everything is what we used to do this and we used to do that, and this is never going to work and that's never going to work. You don't want to be talking as the negativity in the room all the time. Nobody wants to work with that, and it doesn't move you or the business or the problem forward in any way. So when you're talking, think through why. What are you contributing? Is it positive? And is it solution oriented? The one that ties into, when I was talking about don't oversharing, is that life is not all about you. And I think that when we're young and in high school and early 20s, that we're all a little narcissistic. I think we all have a little narcissism in ourselves, and it's all about social media, seeing yourself and things of that nature. It's natural, but you need to learn that life isn't all about you. When you come into the office and you're having a bad day and you force that bad day on everyone, that just impacts everybody, especially if you're a manager, or if you had a rough morning because of your kids and you come in and talk about that and bitch about that and complain about that. That's just not fun for anybody. I had a manager who you'd say, well, how was your Christmas? And it was just griping about everything that happened and negative. And nobody wants a negative environment like that. And you could have had a horrible Christmas, but don't talk about it. Just say, great, how was yours? It's filter. Filter is very important in this scenario, but life is not always about you. And when you learn how to deflect attention off of you and pay attention to others, that's going to get you really far in your career, because you're going to start to pick up on other people's emotions, how to address them and address them immediately. When somebody might be concerned about something, when somebody might be about to leave the company and you sense something in that, and you can address that and talk to them then. When you take the time to learn how to watch others, watch their emotions, watch the undercurrent of what's going on in the room, you're going to be a better relationship developer. Take the focus off yourself and don't get emotional about everything that pertains to you. I remember, I'm trying to remember like a specific situation, but I can't remember the whole story. But I remember doing this when I was an executive admin and I was young and reporting to the owner of a company, and something small would happen to irritate me, like a flight got canceled, or lunch was 20 minutes late for a meeting, or, those kinds of things. And I would go and dump it on her, just bitching about it, blah, blah, blah. And this ruined my day. And the older I got, I thought, oh, when I got into the roles that had that much responsibility and people younger would come to me with a silly problem, I started to realize they had so much to do. They did not care. They did not need me in there griping about something small. And it was my job to be fixing it. And often you need to fix it silently. So nobody else hears you. Nobody else might even notice that there's a problem. If your lunch is late, just say to the meeting, lunch is running a little bit behind. I'll bring it in here as soon as it arrives. Thank you for understanding. I remember getting irate about the dumbest stuff. And when I think about that, I took that to a VP or a president or something, I'm mortified. Just like, oh my God, that was so dumb. So that's what I mean by life is not all about you. I couldn't find a parking spot, or, just the things that come out of your mouth that are very self-centered and self-focused. You learn to move past those when you get into more responsibility and understand that the things that you're passing on to your boss just adds more to their plate and things to worry about, or sets a negative tone for their day, any of those things impact them when they need to come in and focus and be positive and have a good day. So anytime in your career, if you are at work and you're really upset and you're focusing all on you, think back on, am I being too self-focused? Am I talking about the dumbest things? Is this absolutely ridiculous? Somebody will look at me like I am absolutely ridiculous. One of the big ones of feedback for me is you cannot wear your emotions on your sleeve. And it took me a while to learn this. I'm very emotional. I'm very outgoing and I have a bad temper. And I didn't hide it. And one of my bosses said to me, you can't let people know how you're feeling. You've got to be neutral and you've got to keep all of your emotions in control. You can't be super angry or really frustrated or sad or upset, that crying at work. I'm not saying I haven't cried at work since I got that feedback. I have, but it's been a serious situation. But just crying because you've had a bad day and those things, that's our natural behavior when we're, in our teens and in our 20s, learning how to maneuver all of that. And it's natural that we just want to vent it to somebody, but work is not the place. I would find myself, I don't have a middle. So I was really mad or really happy. And there was no middle there. And I could not hide from anybody being mad or upset. It showed on my face. It showed in my behavior. I either pout or be angry or whatever. And it ties into some of these other things. Life's not about me. And my way isn't the highway. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't going my way and the decision was not something I agreed with, but it's not always going to be. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things that helped me change my career, was that, for one thing, when I had an issue and I came forward and I was frustrated and I was emotional or something, I was listened to and respected and understood more, instead of being somebody who gets frustrated over every little thing and is irritated every single day. I remember one time losing my mind because a guy delivered a snow cone machine, not a snow cone machine, a slush machine or something, for me to make for all of our customer service agents. We used to do that a lot, make them stuff and take it to their desk or make them treats or grill out for them. And it was something that tied into a week-long theme. Maybe it's customer service week or something. And I'd already put out a calendar of what was coming on what day. And this was the day they were expecting slushies. So this young kid, I say young kid, he was probably my age, but early 20s, had his own entertainment delivery, bounce houses and slush machines and snow cone and popcorn. And he delivered the machine and handed me the bags of mix and left me no instructions. So he just said, you dump the mix in here and you turn it on and it takes about 45 minutes. But he didn't say it was diluted mix and you had to mix it with water by any, different measurement. And so hours go by and it's just slushy, just mush, and it never froze. And I was just livid. And I wasn't out of control at that point. I was livid on the inside. But when I called him and told him what had happened, he's like, well, you're supposed to dilute it with water and you're going to ruin my machine. And I said, you didn't give me any of those instructions. It could be really helpful if you had some written instructions you could leave with somebody. I've got all these people expecting it. And when you aren't delivering something that people are counting on, you just get embarrassed. And I was embarrassed and I didn't want to let them down. But when I called him, instead of acting like a business owner where we could talk it through and he could say, okay, let's try this tomorrow and we'll start it all over. He was just like, you're going to ruin my machine. And and you're just stupid. He basically was just telling me I was stupid, that I couldn't figure this out. And I just got irate. And I went to the chief operating officer. Thank God he was an incredible patient boss and had kids of his own and things of that nature. And he was just Mr. Calm. I was furious. And the kid had come up to pick up his machine, and I just unplugged it and left all the stuff in it and wheeled it to the lobby and was acting like a complete brat myself. And our CO went out there and just said, hey, you know, try to think about what she's going through. You know, she's got 400 people relying on her for something, and everybody's let down. And he just talked to him so calm. And that was what I wanted to learn how to be. But to stay calm and talk through situations, because he completely neutralized the situation. This kid calmed down, everything worked out. Needless to say, we didn't use him again, but I was pitching a royal ass fit about slushies. And when you think about that, that is a stupid reason to put that out in the atmosphere to where people see you act like that and basically make a decision about you in the workplace. If you're going to lose your mind about something, it needs to be something very, very, very understandable. Anyway, that's the biggest one. And if I have any advice, that's it. Because if you learn how to control your emotions and keep them inside and maneuver the situation without emotion, some of the other things are going to fall into place. You won't be somebody who overshares, and you'll know when to speak. The next one is the best feedback of you are too compartmentalized. You're too tunnel visioned in your role, and every action that you take doing whatever it might have been back then, benefits or 401k, who knows what it was, impacts another department in the company. And, you know, the way we spend our money, the budget impacts another department in the company. So the feedback was, get to know the whole business. Know and understand how every bit of the business works, not just HR. And that was just, it changed me, and it changed my career for sure, because it opened up a lot of doors for me because I knew how everything worked. In Limbo, we were a big call center, and call centers have to use analytics to know how many people need to be on the phone for how many calls we're expecting on that day and that time based on analysis. And then how many people can be on break, how many people can be on lunch, what are they going to do if somebody's late or calls in. It's just all a very big puzzle that they so masterfully put together. And so that's called workforce planning, or workforce management is what we called it. And I learned the concept. I didn't learn how to do what they did, because you don't have time to learn the whole business like that. You need to learn and understand what they do, what you do ties into that. So for me, it was, I need to hire reliable people, because when they don't show up, this is what it's going to do to the call center floor. Or if they call in sick, or, you know, things like that. I need to hire quality people, because I started to learn what the quality department did on a daily basis. They were the ones who audited calls and would listen into calls. And we were in the healthcare industry, so there was a lot of HIPAA requirements, and there were, you know, just things that have to do with the medical industry that were required that they had to talk about and make sure that the patients knew and understood. And so quality would listen to calls, and the people who did not follow protocol or HIPAA requirements or knew their information, like they came out of training, not knowing and understanding everything, that impacted the quality of the call. Too poor quality calls, one of our big hospital systems could let us go. So I learned that. Speaking of hospital systems, I learned what the people went through in account management, the ones who were managing the clients every single day, dealing with problems, technical issues, anything coming in, what they dealt with. And then IT, what the system was on the call center floor, what it looked like behind the scenes, what they had to do to maintain it, what our disaster recovery plan was. We were under one roof right here in Tornado Alley. What happens when a tornado comes through and, destroys our call center? We're supporting hospitals all over the country. Let's see, what else? Training and development, learning all of that, sales, how they got out there and sold what we did to hospitals. So next thing you know, this happened very organically. And I started being the person that would tour potential clients coming in. So they would come in, they would always start in HR and talk about how we got the really great people that we got and the really reliable people, the people that stayed 10, 20 years as call center reps. And after that, I just became the person to walk them into the training room and show them how training worked and how the training system did. I actually went through the 5 weeks of training that the call center reps did. All the tests I took, the on-the-job training on the floor, taking calls, all of it. And it helped me to be able to talk the business, and it helped me to be a better employee. And I would tour them on the call center floor. I'd explain workforce management and then turn it over to the workforce director. I'd explain quality and turn it over to them. I'd go onto the floor and show them kind of over their shoulder, this is what they're doing, and this is how you can tell what hospital it is, and this is how you can tell what service they're calling about. One of the biggest questions people asked was, what do you do in an emergency? And I explained to them what happened when I was working there when 9/11 happened. And here we're representing all of these hospitals and people are calling in looking for loved ones. So there's going to be disasters that happen. I could talk to that. So the culture, the environment, everything I knew, that helped me so much. And it set the stage for me doing that for the rest of my career life. I learned every bit of the business when we were purchased by a very large waste recycling company. And I went out to the plants and learned what they were doing, how they were processing medical waste, how they picked it up, a driver, like understanding what they did on a daily basis, seeing them in action. I would actually walk up to the drivers that I saw out in the wild. Like if I was up at the doctor's office and I saw one of our trucks, or was at Walgreens and I saw one of the trucks, I'd walk up to him and introduce myself, say, I work with you. How are you? What's going on today? Thank you for what you're doing. But knowing the business. And then the more I dove in, I got involved with the business transformation and I learned the financial aspect of it and how the PO system and accounting system worked and all of that. So get to know as much as you can about the business. Ask people what they do. Ask them questions. I think that every support staff person should have to, during their orientation or their first 3 months on the job, go out into operations, whatever the operations might be. They need to go out into the operation and see what that's like for a day or so. Like if you're working for a company that has a lot of trucking, do a ride along with them, see what their day-to-day is, because that's going to impact you in every single decision that you make in your job. It's also going to help you develop your relationships. It's going to show those people you care. You care enough to know what I do every day so you can learn how to support me. I literally worked with people who did not realize how they supported the operational business employees and would communicate to them in a way that they couldn't even receive the communication because they were driving in a truck, or would try to do some sort of recognition that wouldn't even impact them because they were out in a plant. So knowing all of that is what helped me to develop all those relationships in operations. And then that started to be where people would call me with challenges or problems or ideas, or, hey, this driver did this most amazing thing for somebody. Can we write a story about them? all of those things started to come into me. So know your business. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because it's going to show that you care and want to learn, but it's also going to make you be able to walk the walk, talk the talk in meetings, be impressive in front of clients, be respected by all the other employees, and get promoted. And another one is from a VP of HR, Andrew. I doubt very seriously he's watching, but if you're watching and you know me and you know Andrew, you're going to get this. He had a rule and feedback to always take 24 hours to respond to an email or to respond to a person that got under your skin, or to respond to a problem, to be able to think through something. He said if it was very emotional and you were upset or angry, think about it for 24 hours before you responded. This saved me so many times, because how many times are you frustrated and angry and you type out something or you say something, and then an hour later you're like, oh my God, I was an idiot, and you can't take it back. Or I've seen people hit the button and that goes to everybody in the company instead of just the person that you were intending it to, because you replied all or something. I've seen so many of those accidents happen because you were acting emotionally instead of letting that emotion go by and acting objectively. I was the queen of that because I was super emotional and had to learn how to work myself through that. And Andrew saying, take 24 hours, used to always remind me to think it through before I responded. So think it through before you respond, and think about the previous feedback. Why are you responding right now? What are you going to say? Is that going to impact your career? Is that going to impact your reputation, your brand? Are you oversharing? Are you being all about you? You know, it all kind of ties in together, but don't respond if you're overly emotional. Wait and think it through. Let's see. Take feedback well. I saw many people lose opportunities at the company because they didn't handle feedback well, and they just were never going to grow any further at the company. They had to leave and go somewhere else. Mostly feedback when they didn't get an internal job. Somebody else got the job. I've seen people get really mad and frustrated and irritated and just in disbelief that you didn't pick me, or accusatory, or blame it on anything. Got down to a point where I used to teach a class about how to apply from within and how to take feedback. And if you didn't get the job, how to take that feedback and grow and get it the next time. But pitching a fit when you receive feedback is going to definitely put you in a light that you don't really want to be in. And it's hard to recover. That's another take 24 hours. There is nothing wrong with receiving the feedback you didn't get the job and just saying, thank you very much. Can I process? And if I have any questions, can I come back and talk to you tomorrow? And go be emotional about it. Be disappointed. Everybody's disappointed when they don't get a job. But reacting and taking it out on the person that could bring up another job in the future is not the thing to do, because they're always going to remember that you didn't take it well, you didn't listen to feedback, you weren't willing to change and adapt or to grow. Another Andrew feedback was, don't sit back and wait for opportunities to come to you. Don't assume that everybody's going to see your contributions. And what he used to say was, nobody cares more about your career than you do, which basically meant your career is in your hands. Don't depend on somebody else to put you out there, to draw attention to your contributions or your successes and your accomplishments. That you need to do that yourself. And since Andrew was an HR person and he was over learning and development, we preferred to hire from within. So we always posted our internal jobs. I would send them out to everybody and we'd have a lot of applicants. And I always say, if you've waited till the job's posted, you're too late, because usually there's several people that have popped in somebody's mind as a hiring manager because that person has spoken up and said that they are interested in something. Can you tell me more about your job? I'd love to move forward and work towards this, but I'm going in a totally different direction. I can talk about that in another video, but nobody's ever going to care like you do. Remember that. Be proactive about your career. Talk about what you want to do. The people who got internal jobs would literally go to a department they were interested in and say, I really would love to move into this, role. Is there any time that I can sit by you to see what you're doing, when I'm not on the clock for my other thing? And, is there any advice you might have for me, or books that I can read, or things that I can learn? And those people ended up being really successful. We had a call center rep who within, I don't know, maybe 3 months knew how to take every single call on the call center floor. And calls were in tiers of difficulty and client complexity. So, you'd come in and you'd learn the basics and learn how to answer calls for the basic, most simple hospitals. And then as you would rise into different groups, they were numbered, because that's how the workforce management group filtered calls through to a group number. See, they were numbered based on their skill set. And it took time to learn all of this and get to the most complex clients who, you'd have to maneuver through many different screens just to be able to help them. This person had 4 different screens on her desk, and within 3 months could take calls all the way up to the toughest clients, because she just asked. She mastered something and went to them and said, all right, I'm mastered at this. I'm ready to learn something new. And she just had the right personality. She wasn't forceful, and she just learned. Next thing you know, she moved on to workforce management. I think she moved to quality. I'm trying to remember her whole path, but definitely went into workforce management. And because she knew how those calls flowed to her, she was able to go and schedule it for everybody else. She amazed me. Let's see. Relationships are key. So my old CEO, he has a top 10 of advice, and one of them is never burn a bridge. He never burns a bridge. Even if he's frustrated or angry at somebody, he talks it through. And he just says relationships are a key, because you never know when you're going to come across a person in the future who could help you with a job, or help you with a problem, or introduce you to somebody, or you might work with them again. I'm great at developing relationships with people that I connect with and that I get and I understand. And I just really like operations and the front line. But if somebody is in support staff and they're challenging and all about themselves and they don't get it, and they're just trying to check a box and accomplish something, but not make sure that it sticks and it's effective, it just bothers me. It bothers me when somebody isn't accountable. It bothers me when somebody's not working hard. It bothers me when they're nasty. And when I have a very, very, very hard time not wearing my emotions on my sleeve with that person, and just letting them know that I don't agree with their behavior. And I'll have a hard conversation with them and say, listen, I need to talk to you about something, because I think that this is impacting our working relationship and it's impacting our trust, and we've got to work together. And this, and this happened, and it's making me kind of feel this way. And that, again, is how to have a hard conversation. And that's a whole other video. But I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect, because I'm not. There's always going to be hard relationships in a workplace, but if you burn a bridge and you go apply for another job and that person's there, that's going to impact you. And who's to say that's never happened to me? Because I've met many people who don't think like me, act like me, work like me, understand me. And that's just the way that it is. We're people, right? But I have to learn how to manage that a little bit better. And I'm always working on that one. My boss early on, so I was probably like HR manager at the time, and his name was Eric, and he was over operations. I think he was like director of operations or VP of operations at the call center. And we butted heads. Oh my gosh, we butted heads so badly. And I reported to him. And he was very analytical and super serious, and was always reading about getting a black belt in, what was that thing called? Six Sigma, just very different brain than I am. But he was the one that said, learn the whole business. Go out there and learn workforce management, learn the operation, learn what average handle time is, learn, these terms, because it's going to help you recruit for people. But he also told me make yourself a sustainable advantage. And I didn't even really know what a sustainable advantage was then, but that's when he started talking to me about our special culture and how that's a sustainable advantage for us over our competition, because hospitals and clients wanted to work for people that had amazing culture. They would want to work for somebody who had somebody answering the phones for them that had been with us for 20 years, on the phones for 20 years. There's somebody still there that's been on the phones for like 32 years because they're taken care of, and it's a great culture, and they're going to have somebody who knows what they're doing for that client. He said, that's a sustainable advantage for us as a business. What's your sustainable advantage? Because he was trying to teach me then that I had something unique in the ability to connect with people and create a welcome and fun environment, and to teach people. He was trying to tell me how to use these skills to be a sustainable advantage for the business, for the company that I worked for. And at first, I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he would draw things on my whiteboard, and he'd connect the dots, and I'd go, oh, I kind of get it. And I'd kind of get it. And I'd go home and I'd read about something. Back then, YouTube wasn't as big. It wasn't big. This probably was 2004 or 5. So I couldn't go learn about it there, because I do a lot of my learning on YouTube. But I, little by little, as I grew older, learned businesses and understood why clients made decisions and what was different about us. I also learned that that is applicable to you as an employee, your personal brand. Are you something that's unique? Are you something that's unique about the business? And so I was able to craft my role under him to move out of technical HR, and people started calling me Queen of Fun and Laughter. And that ended up sticking and being my official title. But everybody wanted to write about the company that had a Queen of Fun and Laughter, and everybody wanted to come and visit and see what that was all about. And next thing you know, it clicked with me. I get it. I get what sustainable advantage is. So research that. How can you stand out? How can you highlight your assets and make them very important to the company? So Google is a sustainable advantage. YouTube it and look a little bit more about that. So those are my big ones that helped me to really change. And if you notice, there's not one thing about Excel or PowerPoint or any of those things. It's all behavioral and action-based, your personal brand that you put forth. And we used to say all the time that we can teach. I used to talk about this to clients about the way that we hired, and to candidates about who we were hiring and why. You can teach technical application on the call center floor. You can teach somebody to do better PowerPoints, or how to merge something in Microsoft word. You can teach all those things, but you can't teach somebody to be nice. You can't teach them to be emotionally intelligent. You can't teach somebody to have common sense when it comes to taking care of a customer. You can't teach that. It's innate. It's built into you. And that right there is something that you have to focus on, because that will take you down quicker than not knowing how to do a formula in Excel. So this has been really, really long. What are the things you've heard that changed your career or your life? What are the things people have told you that helped you? Tell us about it. I'd love to hear about it and learn from it, but people in the comments would love to learn about it. And I really thank you for joining. And if you have funny stories, I love funny stories, and I wish I could share more, but they're always really confidential. Although my friend Jen and I are working on a list of the craziest things we have seen people get fired for. If I can generalize it enough, I'm doing that. But anyway, thanks for joining. Have a great day. Leave your stories. Talk to you later. Bye.